Hello, beautiful visionaries. This is Lorna Liana. I am so honored today to bring to you Stephen Dinan. Stephen is the founder and CEO of the Shift Network and a member of the Transformational Leadership Council and Evolutionary Leaders. Stephen is a graduate of Stanford University, and he is also a graduate of the California Institute of Integral Studies, studying East-West psychology. He helped create and direct the Esalen Institute's Center for Theory and Research, a think tank for leading scholars, researchers, and teachers to explore human potential frontiers. As the former director of membership and marketing at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, he was the driving force behind the Shift in Action program and the 1 Minute Shift Media series. And so today, Stephen is going to share with us his thoughts about creating a sacred and successful business. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for hosting this beautiful series.
So I would love to hear your story about how you started the Shift Network. What inspired you to create such a vast global community of people who are passionate and on fire about spirituality and personal development?
Well, I was working for the Esalen Institute, and I had an inkling that something bigger was going to be calling me, particularly in the internet education arena. I'd had a few things that were starting to plant seeds, but it wasn't really clear exactly what that was going to look like. And then I sat a meditation retreat, a 10-day Vipassana retreat is maybe the 6th or 7th one that I'd done over a period of time. And at a certain point, my crown chakra just opened up and I got this really big picture download, and of which we've really only created 3 or 4% of that original vision. And it was really clear that there needed to be this global network to be interconnecting all the people who are helping to shift the planet to the next paradigm, to the next level of our civilization, where we really unify as one global family and that we create a peaceful, sustainable lifestyle that really celebrates the best in everybody. And so there was a way in which the vision was very, very vast, but also very specific about how to create local hubs and affiliate models and online education. And it was not coming from my normal consciousness and state of mind, but it was very clear that this was my life work. And I got very excited, even though I didn't have, frankly, any business background or a lot of a lot of experience that was totally relevant, except that I'd been working at this interface of many different transformational practices. And so I had to, basically leave Esalen, attempt to start this, go bust one time, run up 70,000 in credit card debt. We made some progress, but ultimately didn't get traction on the business side of it. Then I had to eventually back into doing a portion of it with the IONS, with the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and then eventually launch again with the Shift Network. So I think part of what I think the takeaway is for people is that it's important, first of all, to take the time and space to really tap in and get your big vision, whether it's a vision quest or a meditation retreat. I know you also work a lot with non-ordinary states of consciousness. I think these are really important times when we can let the habit patterns of our mind and the beliefs around us of what we're capable, let those drop away so we can really open up to our soul download into this life. And what did we really intend to create with this lifetime? And it can sometimes be quite a bit bigger than we can even envision ourselves accomplishing. But to hold that in a spirit of possibilities, and also to be rigorous about building the skills that are necessary to execute on that. So I think of that as a sort of that was a kind of North Star moment for my life, where we got really clear about the trajectory, and I'm still really on that trajectory, even though we've had 1.8 million people participate in things, and we've had a team of 55 and all the customers all over the world. It's still a small fraction of that original vision, and so I really see my role as a soul incarnate here as aligning with this deeper pattern, which I think we designed from a higher level of consciousness before we even incarnate, and that it's in partnership and collaboration with many other souls. So I don't think that, by myself, I'm creating a shift on planet Earth, but what I'm doing is creating a system that helps to interconnect many of the leaders of this who chose to come together and incarnate together to help affect this major up-leveling of the consciousness and ultimately the systems of this planet, so that we really have a more beautiful civilization. And I believe that we are doing that. It's on a long trajectory, but we are we're in the birth canal.
So, did your vision for Shift Network come through as one epic cosmic download, or is it through a series of experiences when you were most connected and open to source?
It came over 3 days, and that initial download was the big one. And then I would say there's tons of little downloads that have come over time about specific elements. Mm-hmm. And again, a lot of the best strategies for how to grow Shift have come in this download mode where there's practices, there's taking time and space away, doing shamanic journeying work, doing all kinds of different things that help to open the aperture of consciousness, and then to align a business around that. So, as an example, when I first got the sense to leave the Institute of Noetic Sciences and then launch the Shift Network as it currently exists, I took some time to clear out, to really let the old patterns settle out and do deep meditation retreats, clear out closets, do inner house cleaning, and spend time in a deeper state of consciousness. And then it came in that I needed to launch with 40 days with 40 spiritual leaders from every major lineage, and to start 40 days after my 40th birthday, which turned out to be, later I found out, was the first day of Lent, which is a 40-day season. And I'm not even that connected with the Christian roots I grew up with, but in many ways it was a more global version of spiritual teachers paralleling the 40 days of the Lenten season, which was a very interesting synchronicity. And so I think when we open to that higher consciousness component of what we're doing, to be constantly true in ourselves with guidance, higher guidance, I do writing regularly, meditating regularly. So I do a kind of writing that I sometimes call higher guidance writing, where you're asking questions of your higher self or other beings that are guiding us. And then that helps to align what we're creating with the Shift Network with the deeper pattern. So most business is designed sort of, in a way, market need up versus kind of vision down. And I think that when you're creating a sacred business, it's ultimately trying to align that with the deeper spiritual template that we're coming in with is the most valuable, because then what we're doing is you can get the full backing of your soul energy and soul force, rather than just responding to, oh, here's an opportunity for profit in the larger market and I could serve this need. Is that really your true essence? Is that really your dharma, your destiny path to be bringing that forward? And when we take that as our first question, then we can create things that actually are more groundbreaking, more interesting, more that have a unique signature that other people come to versus just another product.
It's so interesting, this juxtaposition between the material and the monetary aspect, and then of business, and then of course the a divine inspiration that is what is the impetus or the signature of a business that is sacred. And so I'm curious to know what your thoughts on how we can navigate this whole need to be able to generate revenue in order to pay for the things that we're trying to do. So, for me as a business owner and as a publisher, I'm constantly in this tug of war between wishing to be able to create this, well-researched, original, important media around sacred plant medicines, around psychedelic science, around the indigenous movement. And, it does require a lot of, energy. I do have to, hire people to be able to help me with this, especially with the translation, video editing, subtitles, things like that. And, to be able to offer that type of content is, a honor and a gift. It's a honor because I have the relationships with the shamans so that they trust me to tell their story. It's a gift back to the community. But anytime that I'm spending, time and focus on that, then there's also kind of like the underlying need to, think about what I can sell in order to be able to bring in the revenue to pay for all of that. So I know that this is a very typical struggle that many spiritual entrepreneurs have. So I'm wondering, is there any recommendation that you can offer us on how we can reconcile the need to be able to make money to pay to grow our business and hire people, and then staying in true alignment to like the what really needs to come through often, which doesn't have necessarily like a direct monetary relationship.
Well, I think the first thing we have to work on is the inheritance that we've all gotten, that somehow spirituality and money are distinct realms and that they're oppositional to each other rather than synergistic. And to some extent, it's the oxygen, or it's the air that we breathe around us. And I believe that paradigm isn't really that helpful. And so there's subtle ways that we inherit a kind of a bias against money-making activities versus philanthropic activities, rather than seeing them as ultimately that they can interpenetrate. So when I launched the Shift Network, people are like, "Oh, you can't make money from selling shamanic stuff online." I'm like, "You sure? We sure can." And we do millions a year in selling shamanic programs. And to build the profit motive in, people are kind of averse to that. And so there was a lot of kind of swimming upstream against some cultural assumptions that we had to do. And then that means that we have to also work on the root system of that in ourselves. So there's always ways that we take in this paradigm that somehow the non-monetary is better than the monetary, rather than actually money is a reflection of the flow of intention and attention. And so we can infuse it with sacred intention. We can infuse it with sacred purpose, and that the money becomes a reflection of the evolution of consciousness. So the more people who buy our programs, the more benefit they receive, and the more is circulating in what I call the transformation economy. So there's all this money is just a symbolic flow of attention and energy and value in the world. And so we want to bring more of that into the transformational sphere. I think there's these arcs of history. We had the agricultural age, then we had the industrial age. We're kind of in the information age, but there's, in certain ways, that's starting to peak. And now I think what's on the upsurge is what I call the transformation age, where more of the economy centers around the evolutionary value that we're exchanging with each other. So that can be the form of coaching or yoga classes. There's so much of like people who are on a spiritual path. You're investing your resources in things that lead to greater growth and life enhancement and different kinds of improvement. So we actually want to honor that the more money that circulates in this economic sphere, the better for the whole planet. It actually feeds back and helps to heal the whole rest of the system. So as a transformational entrepreneur, a sacred entrepreneur, it's like first really beginning to see money as an expression of your sacred intent. And so therefore, anything that you're designing to make money is actually part of the larger service. And then the money flow is actually a reflection of providing value. So when you really provide value, then people value that in return. And to stand in the value of that, I think, is really important as well. So I think that there's a constant rewiring. It's not like we're ever done or ever complete. It's more like just recognizing the subtle ways that we might create those discrepancies. So I'm always interested in, we just did a retreat last weekend, and I'm always interested in the project of monetizing things that people don't think can be monetized because they've got this legacy of conditioning around, oh, this is supposed to be free and this is for pay. Rather, it's like, somebody who's really good at just loving people up. We were working with a woman around, I won't say her name, but like Mama X, and it's like with love and cookies sessions. It's sort of like satsang, except she's like holds you and loves you up and gives you the motherly love that you always missed. It's like you can totally build that into a great brand, and there's different levels of that, and so I think there's almost a fun playfulness of thinking of how can you monetize things that have traditionally not been in the monetary sphere. But when you do that, it starts to allow you then to build on it and to add staff and team and infrastructure and resources and marketing. How can we make peace more profitable? How can we make the evolution of consciousness more profitable? And that in itself is shifting the culture forward when we embrace, in a way, the monetization of what has traditionally been a non-monetary sphere. It allows it to come into the economy and people to make sustainable livelihoods, which I'm sure everybody here is interested in. And so I don't really in my own life see a separation anymore. It's like, oh, there's some things that have more purely philanthropic impact. Yes, like some of the collective work that I'm working on climate change solutions and advising, mayors and things like that about how they can really bring things forward. But I also feel like I'm happy to, I'm happy to make things super profitable that are traditionally been seen as, oh, you don't monetize that. And no, actually, with the internet, you can actually monetize most things that are, and when you do, it gives more space for your soul to come in, because then you can hire a team and develop resources and programs around things that really add value to the world.
What are some of the more surprising things you've discovered were monetizable? So, shamanism is definitely, I would say, one of those areas where there's a lot of tension between, shamanism ought to be free, but then yet, like, there's a huge amount of interest and people want the information they're hungry for, to learn more and to have experiences and to deepen their knowledge. So what are some of the other things that you were surprised that people were really interested in purchasing?
Well, as an example, in our first year of business, we created the Peace Ambassador program, and the first version of that was like, it eventually kind of diminished some, but we did over $100,000 program launch around becoming a peace ambassador, bringing basically the best peace technologies together to train you in how to become a better agent of peace in the world, which is traditionally a philanthropic activity. Mm-hmm. I think that's really interesting. It's like, so, I would say the whole category of spiritual teachings in general has been important to monetize, and you can create communities that people really want to be a part of. And you can modulate the price point depending on the value received. But from peace programs to shamans to energy healing, it's a whole economy. And to not assume that anything. I mean, it would be great. It's almost more fun for, like, you come up with something and then I come up with an idea of, like, how could you monetize that? That would be even more interesting as a concept, and I think that's part of what we're getting good at in the internet sphere, is we're figuring out how can we monetize things that are very niche soul missions that then can, reach a global audience. And actually, I was thinking of, this wasn't in the spiritual sphere, but there was some guy who was really just obsessed with dunking a basketball and training himself how to do that, and like all the things that helped him jump higher. And he created this online program for dunking, basically, and created this huge livelihood from dunking a basketball, because that was his thing that he really wanted to do. So to start with, like, what's your thing that lights you up, that expresses your soul mission, that feels like it's your most fulfilling thing, that you might do for free just because you enjoy it. But then if you can figure out how to monetize it, then you can build a whole business around that.
How do you have a methodology to explore or determine whether a particular irrational passion or interest actually has a community around it and has the possibility to be able to, like, for you to be able to create a hub from it? So I noticed that, as I've watched the Shift Network grow, you have this ability to be able to create communities around different topics. Do you have a way of, like, deciding, oh, well, I think we're going to, like, create a community around dreaming now, or, now is the time to explore, how much of a online space and community we can create with energy healing? Do you have a process?
Well, there's part of the process is we'll find a teacher that we think would do really well, and then we'll do a course with them and see if we can do a successful course launch, and we can start to do multiple courses in a vertical that are doing well, and that our ad team is actually able to advertise pretty well. Then we often will say, well, the next step is to do a summit, and then we build out more faculty in that area. And then the next level, which we haven't really done yet, is to build a school in each area so that there's a transformational school. So Qigong is an example. We had a neighbor on the IONS campus named Mingtung Gu, whose English wasn't super strong, but he's a really sweetheart of a guy. And for a long time, we're like, we can't really do anything with Qigong. Like, Mingtung is somewhat broken English. And it was like, are we going to really be able to do something? And at some point, I just got the inner nudge, like, we need to try a program with Mingtung. And we actually, we figured out how to do it and got some traction. And he started getting better numbers. And then we said, okay, well, let's do a summit. So we just did a Qigong summit, and we got that to have 50,000 people in it. And then now it's like we've got Daisy Lee's doing women's Qigong, and we've got medical Qigong. And so we're now kind of like creating so the next level of that is to do more of a full school and certifications. So in a way, you kind of test test with like what goes viral, what gets traction. If you're writing a blog or content, it's like you're seeing what do people pick up, what do they forward to others. That always is an indication of interest. And then trying to think about and to tune in about what's in the zeitgeist right now. What's the next growing edge? So as an example, early on, I felt like, I didn't want to lead with too much Christian work because I felt like it would pigeonhole a certain way, and a lot of the new paradigm community is a little bit kind of post-Christian, a little bit anti-Christian. But at a certain point, I was like, okay, we need to actually reclaim this domain. And so then we launched a Christ Path program with Andrew Harvey. It went super well. We positioned it for people who are kind of like recovering from their Christian roots, but then wanted to reconnect with it. And then we built in, we built several programs. It was one of our most successful program offerings. So we've kind of these waves. We're always looking at what is the next wave. It's like, okay, here's the next wave of interest in this area. So you can track the larger field, see where it dovetails, experiment with some launches, or you can start with some articles or content in an area, see what's getting the most excitement around it, and build from there. So that's a little bit more the bottom-up strategy versus the vision-down strategy. So I think it's important we clarify our vision and we're manifesting what's really truly ours, and then we're sensitive to what the market need or hunger is as well. So we can sequence what we're going to roll out. But I always think it's good to test things with less investment in an area first, if you can.
What does that look like? What does that look like?
You can put out a blog article. The fast thing is like I can write a blog in half an hour or 45 minutes. And if we post it and put a little boost on it, does it get traction? Are people interested in that area? Does it get, or if we do a launch, it's like how much, we experiment with one launch in an area like we did for a number of years. We just had one dreaming faculty. Now we're going to have 4 or 5. And so once you can get traction with something, then you can build it. Like with you, it's like, you can experiment with all kinds of different things in terms of like free offerings, or if you've got a newsletter, you put a bunch of different blogs in there. What do people click on? And that's an indication of where there might be interest. Or you can do polls where you ask people what are the areas that they're most excited about or interested in, or who are the teachers that are most interested. So there's this kind of in feed that is helpful as a sacred entrepreneur, that to marry that with your own kind of download, visionary self that you want to bring a certain body of content or teachings out into the world.
So how do you identify some of the incredible thought leaders that you have as teachers in the Shift Network? So I see that you are constantly coming out with different programs, and I'm always really curious, like how you discovered some of these individuals. You recently had my friend Nikki Scully. She's been on my summits in the past, and then she launched an Egyptian shamanism program through the Shift Network. Do you have a method to identify people?
Well, we're constantly just scanning the landscape personally. So we go to events where there are going to be different thought leaders and teachers. There's a certain, and then I'm a big believer in asking for referrals too. It depends on your kind of business. We're more of an aggregator business. Some people, it's not as much, but in your area, it's like, I would say take the top 10 people that you most respect and ask them who are the 3 people that you would most recommend. It's like, so Nikki came mainly off of a reference from Sandra Ingerman, who's been one of our top shamanic faculty, and she was on a list of people that she recommended. So then we have her in the annual summit. We see a little bit her draw power, how people rate her content, and also ask for other references for people. So there's a vetting process of and there's also a little bit of like determining how much demand there might be for something. You can tell that, sometimes with the free offer or an article or a blog or in a summit, like who do people gravitate towards? And then you can also tell, like you can get a sense for how well their books are doing on Amazon, or where sometimes if they're doing their own launches. Or another thing for us is like if people are on a summit and they promote, you don't even have to ask them how many people are on their list. You can tell how many clicks they drive, and that gives a sense for how big their base is already. So it's a little bit assessing where somebody is in the arc of their own business development, and then also the match between a certain body of teachings and the base of people that, like, for instance, we have a certain profile of people who tend to be more seasoned seekers. They tend to be on the older side, 45 to 75, usually women. They're not like kind of the spring chickens on the spiritual path. Like, how do you meditate? They're more interested in the deeper dive of like, they want to get more advanced content from more advanced teachers. And so that tends to be who we attract. And so we're always looking for who are those next level teachers, not necessarily the ones who are on Oprah, but the people who are like, so I like to ask, for instance, people that I really respect, as an example, when I'm part of the Transformational Leadership Council. So I ask people at the Transformational Leadership Council, who do you feel is the most spiritually awake person in the Transformational Leadership Council? I did that the first year I was there. And about 5 or 6 of the people said Bill Bauman. And I didn't even know Bill at the time, but I was like, I'm going to get to know Bill Bauman. He's not a household name. He's kind of behind the scenes. But it's like, is he one of the most awake people I've met? Yeah. And so in terms of like, he's not the most famous person, but we did a number of great programs with him, and he's beloved by staff, and the people who did his programs were great. And so we want to deliver, like, I like to find out who are the teachers too, not just who because sometimes the people who are popularizers aren't necessarily the deepest teachers. Mm-hmm. And so, it can depend on your function. If you're wanting to bring out something that reaches a wide audience, sometimes more entry-level stuff is what you want to lead with. But if you're wanting to kind of take people deeper, sometimes, you want to find out who's going to work with different folks. And it's like, so I'm always curious about who are people's teachers and mentors. Like, ask the teachers and mentors who are their teachers and mentors, and that kind of leads you upstream. I've done that with psychics. I've done that with body workers. I've done that. It's like you want to find out who's the go-to person in each domain that is like the deepest level of mastery.
Mm-hmm. So you guys don't have an application process for people to apply to be faculty
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit like, it's not like it's just, there is a page that you can go to that you can apply. It says, I think it's /faculty. I think it's theshiftnetwork.com/faculty. There's a page about it, and then there can be, a submission, but it's not like we're just blasting out about it and like apply to be a faculty, because many people come to us. And so it's a little bit more like vetting the ones who come and outreaching to the ones that feel like Daisy Lee as an example. It's like once we aggregated the Qigong Summit, people really with her, and so in her program it's done really well. I think she's got 500 in her program. So it just felt like there's a little bit of getting to know people rather than immediately or Thomas Hubel. It's like I kind of waited a year from the first meeting with him before we did a program with him, because I just wanted to see how his career was evolving and his base, and then I felt like, oh, okay, now we can really deliver value there.
Mm-hmm. So for many of the wisdom keepers in this audience who would love to be able to create their own online program that can lead their clients to deeper transformations, what would you recommend that they do first? Create their program or build an audience?
Well, I think you can kind of do things at the same time. It's like if you're just creating an audience, you're usually investing in that. So ideally, you want something that you're building outreach and you're harvesting enough money to then keep fueling the cycle, right? So it's like an online course, or it gets easier and easier to do. And so there's a lot of different platforms you can use, and we don't even go into them, besides, some place like a Shift Network. So if you're experimenting, you're growing your skill set at the same time that you're offering free value and building a base around that. So it's the whole freemium model that's just been extended. Is like, offer enough free value, but then have a clear pathway into the paid, services or content that then you can monetize it, and then you can spend more time on the free outreach, and that leads more in there. So, on the any average event that we do, 3, 4, 5% is kind of, it's good to convert 3 or 4 or 5% of people who sign up for a free event into a program. But, if you drive 10,000 people, then that's 400 or 500 people in a program. And so this concept is you want to just keep bringing out stuff that people are going to resonate with, have a juicy offer that leads them to get onto your list, offer enough value on your list on an ongoing basis. They want to stay engaged, and you have periodic launches where people can engage you in a much deeper way. either through an online course or a personalized program. It can be really easy to get off the ground with personalized programs. So instead of just like, come do a session with me, it's like you're launching a special special 8-week journey for 12 people, and you're going to do this at half of the future price, and that becomes your prototype group, and you go through you create a group program. People respond to, they want to be part of something that they don't want to miss out on, and so that's where launches are effective, because it creates a time limit on the launch of something, rather than just do a session when you ever feel like it. It's like, oh, I'm doing this special launch of this new program, and you package your deeper wisdom in a way that leads people through that journey. So it's generally, you want to not be selling just an hour of your time, but you want to be selling a 7-week process to take you from point A to point B, or a mentorship group that's going to take you from point C to point D. So the art of online marketing is a lot of just about accurately painting the picture of like how you can help somebody go from point A to point B. How do they transform? How do they grow? And the clearer are you about that pathway, which includes the positioning, the title, the subtitle, the core messaging, all of which depicts this ability for you as a credible guide to take them from point A to point B. That's what ultimately builds the value, because people are investing in a destination or an outcome, whereas the free side of the funnel is a little bit more like inspiration, intrigue, fun, that they're curious about what you're offering, but then they get to a point where they want to make an investment, because you can help them grow and evolve in some way that means something to them.
So what does it truly take to grow an audience into a global movement?
Well, I think we're still discovering that. I feel like we are still probably more in the audience mode than we should be at this stage, rather than, because we have so many programs we're launching, that the, movement has a lot more of action and engagement and community built around it. And so I think you can do that in a micro way, where it's like, whatever program you launch, like with you in Theo Nation, it's like you're going to create some sort of Facebook group, and it's like, and there may be a campaign or a certain action that you invite people to do. There may be ways for people to create local groupings. So I think a movement, like a true movement, has to have those multiple levels of an aggregation of people around a shared interest and probably shared mission, a shared outcome they're wanting to see or drive. Then you have to have occasional things that unify that community and that focus them. And usually movement has more of a connotation where people have real-time connections with each other, not just virtual, that there's like some ways for them to get together. So I'd say we're kind of in an earlier stage of transitioning a global audience into a movement. But you can do it at an earlier stage. We've just chosen, because we've tried to be more of an umbrella brand, that we've got all these different wings of things. It's been a little harder. If you have something like more targeted, like in Theo Nation, I think you can build more of that movement sense from the beginning by people being able to co-create the community and potentially larger mission things to emerge from it.
So if you were to envision the Shift Network creating more of a movement, what direction would you go in, and what kind of actions would you try to inspire people to do?
Yeah, so we want to bring more action, sort of concrete, real-world actions into the personal growth process, so that every course has action areas that there are. We do it a bit with summits now, where there's a philanthropy usually associated with most summits. So there's like some percentage goes into a philanthropic output. We have an annual conference called the California Vision 2020 event, which is more about how do we move the needle forward in California as a demonstration. We're also going to be developing a system for Shift seminars, which are local seminars that we have pre-packaged content that you can deliver locally in a church or a yoga studio or other places, so that you can kind of create that local interconnective tissue. So I think that, and then I think that having some sort of periodic campaign or focusing activities can be important as well. Like you could do like a big movie launch, and the whole kind of global community decides to do house parties around it. So you have to, I think, study a little bit more of what grassroots and nonprofit type groups do, and see how do they engage and take inspiration for whatever your particular slant is. So for us, it's more, I'd say that the personal growth arena has sometimes leaned too heavily on, I'm just going to keep evolving myself and making my consciousness better, and not be engaged on the collective levels. And then you have people who are more activist oriented, or are engaged on the collective levels, but then often burn out and don't spend time on the inner side. So we're doing some work to try to weave those two together. And so that's a little bit how I think about how do we transition from a movement. I also feel like more content that is, is tethered to inspiring people to take positive actions in some fashion. So it's sort of like movement always has a trajectory to it, rather than just personal growth tends to be, in a way, it's like differentiate. People become more and more your unique self, but you're not necessarily focusing collectively in a shared direction. So I think those are some areas that I want to keep growing in. So we do have more and more of a sense of a movement, and not just an audience. And audience is probably not, we have an audience and a global community of people who are committed to personal growth, but like movement, like where we really start to change the game. And I'm starting to formulate ways that we can do that around climate change as an example, because it's really becoming more and more pressing need. And I feel like we're going to need to have a positive impact on that field, or in order to remain relevant. And so there's a cool cities initiative, cool blocks, where we help to activate this cool California, and working with the mayor in San Luis Obispo. There's a bunch of things that are starting to coalesce around how do we maybe have a cool climate solutions annual summit that's like focusing leadership in that area, so we can leverage some of what we've built for an area that is more of a purely philanthropic impact, although we'll still try to monetize parts of it. It's like I'm into figuring out how, like, even the peace people, and I'm like, how do we make peace more profitable? And I think that we just take that spirit into whatever we're doing, is like, let's have the impact we want to have. Let's move people in a positive direction, but then let's, make a solid business model around it too.
We're at the end of our time together. I'm curious to know if you have the ability to answer two quick questions.
Sure.
One is, looking back at your entrepreneurial career, is there one thing you would wish to do differently? And the second is, what would be the most powerful piece of advice you have to share with our audience of spiritual business owners?
Good. Hiring people who are at your same or similar skill level earlier can be really good, because things became a little dependent around me for a while in a way, and it feels like there's something's relaxing now that I have more high level, or people who have more experience than me as a business leader. So I think opening to that possibility, which sometimes also means shifting your mindset around money. I had kind of certain lids on the salary grid because like of what I was paying myself, and then like the idea of paying somebody more than me was sort of like, wait, I'm a founder, So there were things that like I had to kind of open to. What does it take to bring in people who are senior to you and to be able to amplify our mission? I think that would have helped a lot early on. I also feel like just there's a discipline around staying open, but then not trying to operationalize too many new ideas too quickly. In a way, it's like getting the DNA of your entity solid and the business model solid, and constantly being innovating, but not innovating in too many directions at once, to try to say, okay, this is our new experiment, and we're going to experiment and see whether we can hone this. Because a lot of experiments do fail, and so if you have multiple failures in parallel, that can kind of create too much stress in the system. And I would also say just focus early on that it's okay and important to build up some cash reserves, because it does allow you to make decisions on a longer horizon. So if you spend, like I raised some money early on and I spent it on building out this whole new platform. So I spent down kind of some of our reserves too quickly, and then it created some stress in the system. So there's something about, just like with a human being, where it's good to have gas in the tank. As a business, you want to have gas in the tank because you make better decisions when you're not worried about where payroll is coming from that month. And so that's an area that I think is a good wisdom. That's a more conservative kind of wisdom. So for me, maybe the more general principle is to integrate, as a sacred business entrepreneur, integrate some of the more conservative wisdom about not making decisions too willy-nilly, being a little more measured, having more cash reserve, having some of those, in a way, more conservative business principles are actually part of creating a healthy business. And then you can be kind of like, go for it and wild-eyed, but you've got your bases covered.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. How can the audience best stay in touch with you, Stephen?
Just go to theshiftnetwork.com, get on our email list. There's a lot of different things coming down from personal growth, but we also are going to be offering a lot more leadership empowerment services of different kinds. We have a mentorship program. We do visionary strategy work. So particularly for the audience that's attracted to this is like, I feel like our big multiple is not just to build the Shift Network into its full potential, but to also empower a whole ecosystem of other entrepreneurs who are doing business in a new way and really serving this shift to a sacred paradigm of living at all levels. So I'm going to be opening more ways to do that in the coming years.
I cannot wait to find out about more. Thank you so much. You have a beautiful rest of your day now. Bye-bye.
You too. Thank you so much.